All right, so get ready because today we are going on a deep dive that's going to make you rethink like every choice you've ever made, maybe even that sandwich you had for lunch today. We are opening up Matt Haig's The Midnight Library.
Ooh, fun.
But this isn't like your typical book report, you know? Like we're not just going to go over the plot. We've got stacks of Goodreads reviews and let me tell you, people has some thoughts.
Oh, I bet. I bet they do. You know what's so fascinating about this book, though, is that it taps into like this universal longing, the what ifs of our lives, you know? It's almost like a social experiment, seeing how people would react to second chances and alternate realities.
Right. And so the basic setup is that like our main character Nora,
Yeah.
she's at a real low point in her life.
Yeah.
She feels like her life is just full of regrets.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of stumbles into this magical library where each book represents a different life she could have lived. It's like sliding doors meets The Good Place, but with like
Oh, I love that. I
yeah,
love that comparison.
more existential dread.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And that's where the book gets really interesting. It's not just about escapism, but like it forces us to confront the psychology of regret. Look, there's this study where people chose not to take a risk, even if it failed. They ended up regretting it more than those who played it safe. This book throws you right into that dilemma.
Wow. That's a serious mind game. Okay, so before we get too deep, let's set the stage with like what the readers are actually saying. Almost 2 million ratings on Goodreads, averaging almost 4 stars. Clearly, this is striking a nerve with people. But you can imagine, not everyone is on board the Midnight Library Express.
Right. So this is where I think some expert analysis comes in. Some readers, like Natalia, felt the book got really preachy, like it was spelling out life lessons. Instead of letting the reader discover them, it's a common criticism of books that try to be both entertaining and self-help guides.
Yeah. It's like being hit over the head with a live, laugh, love sign.
Exactly.
Like subtlety is key.
Subtle.
But then you've got readers like Gabby, who found it deeply moving and praised how it made them reflect on their own choices.
You know, this is interesting because this really highlights how much our own individual experiences shape how we read. Gabby might have connected with Nora's emotional journey, while Natalia was looking for a more nuanced exploration of those themes.
Yeah, and speaking of nuance, there's this whole debate about how the book handles depression. Yun, for example, was concerned that it really oversimplified mental illness, like suggesting a positive mindset is the only cure.
That critique raises some really important points. I mean, while positive thinking can be part of a healthy approach, it's never the whole story. You know, cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT helps people reframe negative thoughts, but it's a process. It's not a magic wand. You know, and the book might gloss over that complexity.
Okay, so we're seeing a pattern here. The Midnight Library sparked some really strong reactions, both positive and negative. But one thing almost everyone seems to agree on is that it makes you think about regret, like that feeling that we could have done things differently.
Yeah, regret is such a powerful emotion, and the book does not shy away from its darker sides. Miranda Reeds in her review talked about how the book captured regret as this crippling black hole, and that image really stuck with me. And it makes me wonder, does the book offer any solutions, or does it just wallow in the darkness?
That's a great question. And it leads us to another big theme that seems to be dividing readers. The idea of finding happiness by being your true self. Some reviewers, like Black Oxford, found this concept to be like oversimplified and even insulting to those struggling with depression.
Black Oxford makes a really valid point. Is there even such a thing as a true self? You know, are we not constantly evolving, shaped by our experiences? And can we truly blame all our unhappiness on not being authentic enough?
This idea of authenticity, it feels both appealing and slippery. Like if we had access to the Midnight Library, would we even recognize our true selves in those alternate lives?
That's a question worth pondering. It's something we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into the reader reactions to The Midnight Library.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork. A book that promises a journey through alternate realities, sparking passionate debate about regret, depression, and the elusive search for authenticity.
Now let's take a closer look at some of the more nuanced critiques. Because while some reviewers might have like really strong opinions, there are others who offer more balanced and insightful perspectives.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Midnight Library, where we are going beyond the surface and really dissecting the reader reactions to Matt Haig's thought-provoking novel.
You know, in part one, we talked about the book's potential to be both inspiring and problematic, and that's a tension that just keeps popping up in the reviews.
Totally. Like on one hand, you have this like fantastical element of exploring alternate realities. Miranda Reeves described these journeys as mind-bending, which I totally get. Who hasn't daydreamed about like different paths their life could have taken.
Yeah, it goes even deeper than daydreaming. The book plays with this idea that our current selves are shaped by all the choices we didn't make. It's like every time we say no to something, a whole new reality branches off.
Yeah. Whoa. Okay, that's making my head spin a little. But I kind of love it. It makes you appreciate the power of like every decision, even like seemingly small ones.
Exactly. And the book dives into this concept of regret, which, as we discussed, can be both motivating and paralyzing. What's interesting is that many readers, like Niloufer Osmekik, seem to embrace this complexity. They see the book as a celebration of life's messiness, not like a roadmap to perfection.
Which brings us back to that whole true self debate. Black Oxford had some strong feelings about that, basically calling it BS. And honestly, I get it. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that there's this perfect version of ourselves out there just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, and that's where the book's philosophical side comes in. It's not just about finding the right life, but about understanding that every choice comes with consequences, both good and bad. It's more about accepting those consequences and making peace with the paths we've chosen, even if they're not perfect.
It's like maybe the point isn't to find a life without regrets, but to learn from them and move forward. Think about that study you mentioned earlier, the one about regretting inaction more than action. Maybe this book is encouraging us to embrace the unknown, even if it means making mistakes along the way.
That's a really insightful connection. And it ties into what some reviewers like Nicole pointed out. She felt the book lacked originality, comparing it to movies like The Family Man, which explore similar themes. But perhaps that familiarity is part of its appeal. It allows readers to access these deep, philosophical questions through a familiar lens.
It's like comfort food for the soul. You know what you're getting, but it still hits the spot. But as with any comfort food, there's a risk of oversimplification. Remember Yuan's critique about the book's portrayal of depression?
Right. She felt it was too simplistic, suggesting a positive mindset alone could cure mental illness. And this is where the book might miss the mark for some readers. While it's true that our thoughts and beliefs impact our well-being, depression is complex. It often requires professional help, medication therapy, like a whole support system.
It's like telling someone to cheer up when they have a broken leg. It's dismissive and doesn't address the root of the problem.
Exactly. And while the book might offer some valuable insights into the power of perspective, it's important to remember that it's a work of fiction, not a medical textbook.
So we're seeing this push and pull between the book's philosophical ambitions and its potential to oversimplify complex issues. And that's what makes these reader reactions so fascinating. It's not just about whether the book is good or bad, but how it interacts with our individual beliefs and experiences.
And that brings us to another important question. Who is this book really for? Aditurbo's review brought up an interesting point, saying it felt more like a young adult novel in its approach to regret and suicidal thoughts, lacking the depth and maturity of adult fiction.
That's a really interesting observation, and it makes me wonder, is the book's accessibility part of its appeal? Maybe it's a gateway to these complex themes for readers who might not be ready for like a more nuanced or academic exploration.
That's a possibility, and perhaps it's also a matter of personal preference. Some readers might prefer a lighter, more hopeful approach to these heavy topics, while others crave something more gritty and realistic.
There's also the element of magical realism. Emily May, a suicide survivor, found this aspect to be a bit too fantastical. She expressed a preference for a more realistic approach to dealing with mental health challenges.
That's a really important perspective. It reminds us that what might feel comforting or inspiring to some could be triggering or dismissive to others, especially those who have personally experienced the darkness of depression and suicidal thoughts.
It's like we need to be mindful of the power of stories and how they can impact different people in different ways. What might be a source of hope for one person could be a source of pain for another.
And that's why it's so crucial to have these conversations, to acknowledge the diverse range of reactions to the Midnight Library, and to explore the book's strengths and weaknesses with empathy and nuance.
All right, so we're back for the final chapter of our deep dive into the Midnight Library. And man, this conversation has been like one of those choose-your-own-adventure books. So many different paths, so many strong opinions.
It really is. It's a testament to the book's ability to spark debate. We've seen how it can be both comforting and controversial, thought-provoking, and potentially problematic.
Totally. And as we wrap up, I want to focus on those reviews that offer like a more balanced perspective, the ones that go beyond like the love it or hate it binary.
Okay, yeah. Let's start with Dr. Apu Sasitharan's review. They highlighted a question posed in the book. Can perfection be attained through the careful movement of the pawns in this deliberate game of life?
Whoa, deep. It makes me think about, like, those moments where we agonize over decisions. Like, we're playing chess with our destiny. But is that even how life works?
Right, that's the million-dollar question, and the book doesn't offer any easy answers. Instead, it presents us with Nora's journey through these alternate realities, forcing her and us as readers to confront the limitations of that kind of thinking.
It's like maybe the goal isn't to find the perfect life, but to embrace the imperfections of the one we have. I'm thinking of those readers who criticize the book for being too simplistic, especially in his portrayal of depression.
Right, and that's a valid criticism. The book does seem to suggest that happiness is just a matter of choosing the right mindset,
Hmm.
which can be really dismissive of the very real struggles that people face with mental illness.
Yeah, it's like telling someone with a broken leg to just think positive and they'll be able to walk again. It just doesn't work that way. But I wonder if the book's message might resonate differently with different readers.
Oh, absolutely. For someone who's never experienced depression, the idea that happiness is a choice might feel really empowering. But for someone who's struggling with mental illness, it could feel invalidating and even harmful.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we need to be mindful of the power of words and
Right.
how they can impact different people in different ways. What might be a source of hope for one person could be a source of pain for another.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations, to acknowledge the diverse range of reactions to the Midnight Library, and to explore the book's strengths and weaknesses with empathy and nuance.
I think we've done a pretty good job of that in this deep dive. We unpack the book's complex themes, analyze the reader reactions, and hopefully spark some thought-provoking conversations along the way.
Yeah, I hope so. And ultimately, isn't that the power of a good book? To make us think, to challenge our beliefs, and to spark conversations that might not have happened otherwise.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought inspired by The Midnight Library. If you could go back and change one decision in your life, would you? And what do you think the ripple effects would be? It's a question worth pondering, even if we don't have a magical library to guide us.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning,